Hello, dear all. Today we are going to discuss Ammu's character and her story in the novel God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. This story seems to be the story of the novel, or the novel itself seems to be the story of Ammu. But there are certain pages of the novel on which the story has been particularly discussed. Although, when one opens the novel, one is able to feel that Ammu is there and she is a divorced woman with two children, and the society is not ready to accept her. So, Ammu's character comes forward as a character which is unacceptable character in the society, especially in the Hindu society or Indian society, where traditional norms say that a divorced woman or a widowed woman definitely is not that acceptable as the other women are. So that is why she's a miserable one, or one can even call her a wretched one. Because of these factors, Amu's character becomes interesting, and that is why in this video you will be watching how her character becomes interesting and how she becomes a very important agent in the development of the God of Small Things. Roy has discussed something very important in this page 19, especially about Ammu. While she is discussing the character of Ammu, she lets us know that it has been a big trouble at that time for the girls who grew young at the houses of their parents, and the parents, being poor, were unable to do anything about their marriages. Though the girls were beautiful, but still, the marriages were not arranged because of the lack of money, because of the lack of dowry. The biggest problem of the Indian society that is being highlighted by the writer here. Roy says that Ammu wanted to get further education or she wanted to get married. Both of the things were impossible because of her father believed that there was no special need for Ammu to go for education any further in the college. She should stay at home and work with her mother. And this thing created a lot of trouble in the mind of Ammu. She wanted freedom, she wanted to grow up in life, she wanted to break the monotony of the life at Eminem. So that is why she tried to go to some other place, but she failed most of the time. All her plans failed, as the writer tells us, that one of the plans ultimately succeeded, and that was to attend a marriage party at the house of some cousin or some relative in Calcutta. So Ammu goes there and breaks the boundary of all that house Eminem had established. Now, this paragraph, which is really very important, that goes to talk about certain things where the desperateness of Ammu is quite visible. This desperateness of Ammu is the desperateness of every girl who is young and wants to proceed further, who wants to get education or who wants to get married and is unable to marry because of the money which is not available and because of the dowry which is not available. So in that way, a very important issue through the character of Ammu has also been highlighted. Though we are reading right now the character of Ammu, but we are seeing that there are many Ammus, as this paragraph goes to indicate that the things are very worse in the case of the girls who are in such a situation as Ammu is going to be. So she makes a desperate attempt to leave the home and to seek a husband for her or to fall in love with someone, just in the same way as baby Kuchama tried to do so, but she badly failed. Now let's see what success or what type of success Ammu meets and whether she remains happy in her marriage, which she tries to secure herself. The paragraph on page 19, at the end of this page, goes to suggest that Ammu is successful up to some extent in achieving the goal of her life, that she goes to a marriage party and there she is able to select someone or to make a choice of her marriage. She finds that the boy is good looking, he's smart, he's well dressed, and is a person who's doing a job at some tea plantation area in Assam. So she decides to marry that person and apparently falls in love with him, but she's not so much clear whether she's in love with him or not. She only simply finds a type of shine in the eyes of that person, and she says yes for the marriage, and he also says for the marriage. Marriage is done, and ultimately they go to that state, tea state, and they start living together. But very soon, Ammu is able to find out and discover that the shine which he had seen in his eyes was not the shine of love, it was possibly the shine of the over drinking, which he very soon discovered. So, biggest flaw now the husband of Ammu has is the over drinking nature, and that over drinking nature grows worse with the passage of time, and Ammu is unable to control that, and so the things go bad on her part as well. She knew that her parents may not like that, but however, she wrote and told to her parents that she's going to marry with a little bit of the discussions and feeling bad and sad. Ultimately, the parents of agree, and in that way, she marries and transfers herself and her husband to that tea state in Assam. As is the case with most of the drunkards, that very soon they run out of money and they run out of any happiness of life. Though Amu spends lots of time with her husband and she gets pregnant and is just about to give birth to her twins, she was so much heavy with the babies in her belly that when it was announced that the war is going to take place between India and China and Assam therefore should be evacuated, it was not possible for her to move, so she decided to stay there for any period of time. During that period, the drinking habits of her husband grew very large and very massive indeed, and he left everything, he spent everything, and ultimately, Mr. Halik, who was the owner of the state, he noticed that and he was just about to send him out of job. So he called him and presented him a type of deal that he either should leave the job or he should make a deal with him with the respect that he should be enjoying his good health by leaving that tea state for some time and going away there in order to repair him. And for this purpose, the owner of the tea state, Mr. Holick, says that he will be paying. But in the meanwhile, he also says that his wife should be left to Mr. Holick's home for some services. Now, this was something very awful, but the husband of Ammu does agree with that. He comes home and tries to convince Ammu as well for this purpose. Now, here a deal is struck between the two about the woman who should be the kind of reward for Mr. Holick when he was paying money and giving money to the husband of Ammu. Ammu looked very attractive because she was young, she was beautiful, and she wore dressing like that. In that way, she appeared to be very attractive one, and that is why somehow Mr. Holick got the attention of Ammu, and he wanted to make this type of deal. Now, it was something like selling the wife, which the husband was proposing, but the wife was very, wise one should say, and very confident one as well. And here, Arundhati Roy tries to portray the character of Ammu in a sense that it was a strong character, that instead of getting sold at the hands of her husband, she tries to resist that. This is the very resistance that we find in the women characters being portrayed by the post-colonial writers like Roy. So Ammu here, first of all, weeps, but later on she makes an agreement with herself that she will not do this kind of thing at all, and her husband becomes very much angry at this, and he too tries to become angry, tries to beat her up, and practically beats up her in such a way that she should agree, but she does not. We see that in this paragraph on page 20, which begins with Ammu watched her husband's mouth move. It gives us another impression to her that Ammu's bravery is at the top and she's not ready to compromise with her husband on selling of her body to Mr. Holick, the landowner. So therefore, she refuses altogether, and the husband of Ammu tries to convince her again and again, and she finds a book which is Reader's Digest collection and hits him very hard, and he goes unconscious, and therefore she decides to leave the home of that person and come back towards Eminem. And now this is something very special about her, that she leaves the home, leaves the husband, and she leaves the love of the children as well. And she thinks that she will be better off perhaps in Eminem when she is away from him. She does all that in order to save herself, to save her body, to save her honor. So that is the kind of strong woman portrayed by Roy in her novel The God of Small Things. Ammu comes back to Eminem, and it's something which is definitely very bad about her, that she will not be so much accepted everywhere in India and in her society, because she is the one who's been divorced. In a way, she has become just like a widow woman, and she must be expecting the treatment of a widow about her. When she reaches her home in Eminem, she is 100% unwelcome because she's got now two kids as well, and she's herself a young, beautiful girl who has left her husband and come home. Nobody would care about the kind of treatment she had met, and nobody would care about the kind of circumstances which forced her to come back. And she comes back, he does come back with her kids, and definitely she's unwelcome. The biggest challenge is baby Kuchama, and the biggest acceptor is also baby Kuchama, because baby Kuchama was also living in that home, Eminem home, after being rejected or after being unable to find the love of Father Mulligan. And now it is Ammu who has come back here in the same home, and she tries to convince herself that if she is a failure in love, then Ammu is a failure in marriage. In that way, both of the people have the equal condition, and this thing perhaps make her silent for some time. But Ammu can feel the unwelcomeness very much in the eyes of everybody, but still she has to do that. So Roy, by portraying this character and equating the situation of both the women, one is beautiful, one is not, but both of them meet the same situation. So the writer tries to portray that the character of women in her novel goes to show all those Amus and Kochamas who have become a failure and have to live in the houses of their parents, and what is the kind of bad treatment they have to accept. There is no social system available for them, and because of the absence of such a social system, women become a degraded type of person, and they try to restore their honor. They make many attempts. They remain fully attached to their family and be honest as well, and they seek the second marriages as well, but all these things are not allowed in the society. So that is why these characters of women become the small things, as they are unable to find the same respectable place as they had before their marriages. The writer has also reflected on the post divorce condition of Ammu in the later coming passages on page 22 and 23. In these passages, we find that Ammu takes a lot of interest in order to divert her attention. She takes interest in the songs, and sometimes she puts some flowers in her hair and wears the good dressing as well. She tries to enjoy her life or tries to be happy, but perhaps this happiness is transitory. Still, she feels the absence of something, and she feels herself filled up with the strange kind of desires, and that is why sometimes she would go to the river at the time of night, and there she would sit and she would listen songs from her radio. And the writer also tells us that at the mid of night she would take bath in the waters of the river, and this thing goes to show how much she was restless, how much she was feeling bad or sad in a way, and she was trying to reflect her sadness in her behavior. So one can say that the women may be young, maybe divorced, maybe widowed, that all type of women, even if they become mothers, they too have the human desires and they need to be fulfilled. Society therefore must come forward in order to create such circumstances where women can remarry, where women can marry without dowry, where the poor women can also marry, where they can live with the husbands who are good one, and where they can leave possibly those husbands which are not good one, and in that way make their life possible. So Roy has given a very strong and very powerful message through the character of Ammu, that we should not create Ammus, we should create those Ammus which are living, which are not only beautiful but are attempting to live a beautiful life, and their attempts in this regard should go as a success. Thank you very much for watching all this video. This has been very great, and hopefully seeing you in some next video on the same novel.